You're listening to Change Your POV Podcast, episode 40.
We woke up and there was radio chatter of a fob. I want to say I think it was a Polish fob, but a fob that had been hit and attacked pretty hard and was getting overrun down south of us, down near Abu Ghraib. And so we were instructed to load up all the Class 5, so all the ammo we could get a hold of. So we loaded our trucks up heavy that day.
Welcome to Change Your POV Podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life, like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Change Your POV Podcast. I am your host, Eddie Lazary. This week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with my counterpart from my time in Iraq, 2nd Squad Leader, Staff Sergeant Jay Fondren, U.S. Army retired. I watched Jay grow from a young private first class into a non-commissioned officer that I highly respected and admired as a young man and a leader. Jay was my right hand, my number 2. Whenever a decision was being made that impacted the platoon, Jay's voice and opinion were always heard. I remember many long hours were spent at my house in Killeen, Texas, creating packing lists, loadout plans, platoon readiness documents, and training criteria, getting our soldiers ready for combat. Jay was often the yin to my yang, my voice of reason. I never hesitated to let him know what I thought, and he reciprocated whether I asked for his opinion or not, and I was glad for it every time. More than counterparts, Jay is my brother. I will cherish his friendship until the day I die. Anyone who has led men, and especially as a squad leader or a platoon sergeant, can tell you this is often a very lonely billet because there are few people you can really talk to and open up with. Many things you want to talk about or share you can't really share with your lower enlisted. It's your job to keep the morale and confidence, and to do this, there is a hat you must wear at all times. Jay was my sounding board, someone I could talk to about my fears, questions, and uncertainties. I highly valued that in him. Tonight's episode is special in 2 ways. One, it gives me an opportunity to talk to my long friend, Mr. Jay Fondren, but also we are sharing our stories of a very impactful day in our lives. April 4th, 2004, what will become known to those who served there as Black Sunday. This was the Battle of Sadr City. A radical cleric, Muqtada al-Sadr, who we affectionately refer to as Mookie, decided to call for a jihad or holy war that not only created an uproar in Sadr City but all of Baghdad. I'm not going to get into the specifics of this particular battle. I've included a couple really great articles in the show notes of this episode, but I just wanted to say this. You got to understand this position that we were in. We were literally only weeks in country. We had just arrived into Baghdad after a 3-day convoy. Maybe 2 weeks later, we were still conducting right seat, left seat rides. This is the operation that an outgoing unit has with an incoming unit to try to hand off the best they can information that they've learned over a course of a year. Now, this right seat, left seat ride usually lasts about 2 weeks. You can imagine, how can you pack a year full of combat knowledge into 2 weeks? Yeah, I thought the same thing. We were cruising with force protection ammo. What that means is we weren't fully combat loaded. A combat loaded soldier would have 7 30-round magazines or 210 rounds. We were equipped with a whopping 1 30-round magazine per person, 30 rounds. Our crews served weapons like our 50 cals, 240 Bravos, had maybe a can worth of ammo. For those of you that have been in combat, you know how quickly you can go through ammo. Imagine going through 1 magazine or 1 can of ammo on a crew served weapon. It takes but an instant. But it was okay because our mission, as we knew it at the time, was humanitarian. We were to cruise around and we were to, win the hearts and minds of the people and help out with humanitarian missions such as cleaning up the trash in the streets, removing the literally free-flowing waste, human waste that is, through the streets of Baghdad and Sadr City in particular, rebuilding schools, rebuilding buildings and bridges, tried to regain some sense of what would otherwise be known as normalcy in an area like that. In the slums of Baghdad, Sadr City, what is normalcy? Good question. One thing I do know, though, that there was kids running through the street, barefoot, very hungry, and always with their hand out looking for and asking for something. This particular battle started with a patrol of soldiers from 25 Cav escorting a waste removal truck, commonly known as the honeypot truck or the honey truck, through the area of Sadr City when, without any warning, took enemy fire from an ambush. This sparked a battle that would last, some would say, sustained combat operations for over 80 days. Jay has come on today to talk with me and with you, the listeners, about our different perspectives of what happened that night. What was battle like from our foxhole? What did we go through that night? Now, this isn't the entire story. These are just our perspectives on what happened that night. I was attached to the headquarters platoon of the 1st Brigade Reconnaissance Troop stationed out of FOB Iron Horse, which was central to our area. The area that this battle took place in Sadr City was right outside of FOB War Eagle, which housed the 25 Cav. The largest aid station in our area was down south in Camp Cuervo. That will come into play when you hear this story. All in all, those 3 FOBs, FOB War Eagle, FOB Iron Horse, and FOB Camp Cuervo, made up our 1st BCT combat team, led by then Colonel Abrams. Yesterday marked the 12th year anniversary of this battle in Sadr City. This episode is a unique episode compared to what I normally do for Change Your POV podcast, dedicated to 7 soldiers that were killed in action and more than 40 soldiers wounded. Yeah, I saw the, I've been Facebook stalking you, man, like crazy, just so you know.
Yeah.
You got like really cool videos, man, of like everything you got going on. You just got done doing that hand cyclone for, what was that, 10 miles?
Yeah. So we went and they had the LBJ deal and said they had a 10-mile part. And so it was my first, road race.
Yeah.
And so we did it, and it was pretty cool. We did it, and it's pretty hilly out there near Fredericksburg, and I was able to knock that out, and I was pretty impressed. I just completed it. I just wanted to finish it and get it done, and wound up finishing before everybody else. So
that's called winning, man. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, if you finish before everyone else, that means you won.
Yeah,
that's kick ass, dude. Now, was it like was it a special chair that you cranked with your hands, or did you do the old fashioned like hands to the sides and like chuck the wheels forward? What was it? What kind of bike was it, or chair?
No, so we're riding with Operation Comfort, their group down here that does adaptive hand cycling. So it was like a bicycle made for people to ride with just their upper extremities. So it's a 3-wheeled, and then so we did that, and then but the organization, they do like, the one thing I haven't done with them is sit ski. They have not sit ski, but they do sled hockey, and so I need to get out and try that out while I'm down here. But they do sled hockey, but we go ride like once a week, and I hadn't quite done up to 10 miles. I've been flirting with 10, but I haven't quite hit it. Mm-hmm. And so we knocked it out the other day. Did a little over 10. Wound up doing a little over 10 by the time we rode up to the start line and got everything done. So it was pretty cool.
All right. Well, before we get going, I just want to say thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. And how are the wife and kids? And I mean all of those kids.
Yeah, they're doing good, man. We got 6 of them now. So
yeah,
they're doing good. The little one turns 1 tomorrow.
And that's your only daughter, right?
That's the only little girl, and then the rest of them all boys. So all the boys born in even years, and the little girls born in an odd year. Spaced out pretty much every 2 years, except for.
Wow. Did you plan that?
No. Well, we got pre-deployment, post-deployment.
Yeah. That's right.
And then just worked out that way.
Nice. All right, cool. Well, folks, welcome to Change Your POV podcast. I already did the intro for this. that you'll get to hear tomorrow, Jay, when this comes live. But today is a special episode, and Jay agreed to come on and talk with us not only about his experience with this particular anniversary, the 12th year anniversary of the battle in Sutter City that happened April 4th, 2004, during our time with 1st Brigade Combat Team in Baghdad, Iraq, in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom 2. So with that, Jay, welcome to the show. We'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more with you about your personal story that will be coming out in next week's episode 42. So listeners out there, tune in for that. It's going to be a great episode. Jay and I will get into a little bit more of our story, a little bit more of his story before he joined the Army, and some of our he and I's, love stories that we had with one another while we were training to go to combat. I'm sure we've got plenty of those, Jay, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Some of my greatest experiences.
I bet. And then we'll get into our deployment in Iraq, and then catch up to see what Jay's been up to post deployment. So, welcome, Jay, to the show. I appreciate your time, and let's just kind of get right into it. It's a somber time every year. Every year when the anniversary hits, it seems like everybody on Facebook reaches out. Everybody kind of reconnects with one another if we haven't already. But it just seems like it kind of brings everybody together. We remember those that were lost that night, and the many, many more that were wounded. And I just wanted to kind of share our story. I was with the headquarters platoon, Brigade Reconnaissance Troop, and you were with the 2nd Platoon. And let's just start off the story and kind of talk about we got the country, and what do you remember, if anything, about what our mission was when we first got there?
Yeah, so when we first got there, I mean, we were real busy with getting everything ready to go north. Getting running escorts for guys coming back from the airport to the seaport to get all gear, and we just hit the ground running. It was kind of our time down south in Kuwait was really. That's what was spent. We were busy from the time we got there. We were busy, and just getting everything together, and then it was just it's kind of chaotic getting our gear ready, getting everybody else ready, because we were running around in the Pajaros and running all that escort duty and still trying to figure it all out, because it wasn't real. It was real, but it wasn't real,
Yeah, deployment wasn't new to us, right? We've done several trips to NTC, the National Training Center, and back, and I liken our initial deployment to Kuwait. It was very similar to that of a deployment to NTC. Obviously, it was a bigger sandbox, and it was the show. But in terms of the things that needed to get done, they were pretty much similar up to a certain point. But you're right; it was real, but it really didn't sink in quite yet. At least it didn't for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. We knew what to do. We were doing our deal, drawing our stuff, but it wasn't. It hadn't gone live yet.
Mm. And what was the point? So at what point did it finally kind of sink in that, man, this is the real deal? Was it much later? I mean, was it once we got into Baghdad, or was it down in Kuwait? Like, when did that happen for you?
There were guys that were, for me, because you'd see guys that walked around. We talked about it before we deployed, but like, people all of a sudden got that 1,000-yard stare, that oh crap, I'm not ready to go. And we were more of okay, we're ready to go. This is our job. Let's do it. Let's get it on. Let's go over there. And then we got there. We're like, okay, this is what we trained for. This is what we're doing. It's routine. Let's get up there. And then when we got up there, it was, those first couple of days we're still just busy getting everything figured out, getting into country. We weren't really getting a lot of contact. We get shot at just a little bit, but it still wasn't real. There's a few pop shots here and there, and we found, pretty large weapon cache right outside the fob, and I remember walking on that foot patrol and finding that, and so we got kind of settled into our thing, but it still wasn't. We hadn't really experienced the fight yet.
Right. Yeah, I think it was on our initial trip north. It was one of the, I don't know if it was a first platoon truck or second platoon truck. Remember, one of the trucks or a few of the trucks were equipped with that, what was that? That
The
early
sniper,
warning,
yeah, the
that
sniper
the snipe,
detection, yeah,
yeah, the sniper detection system with that crazy antenna,
yeah,
and like it, like it was like every time it would go off in the truck, they would like the report would go out over the radio, and then everybody would stop, and then everybody would get into like this defensive position, and then we had to clear the area, and we realized it was just a faulty alarm by the thing. Remember that?
yeah.
And and then when it then we finally get up to our when we finally get to our fob in Baghdad, we realized that the antenna, the boom portion of the antenna that was coming up off of the truck was
And a bullet
actually was shot through with a bullet.
shot through the bullet. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. The anti sniper system was shot by a bullet. How awesome was that? Like, just how about irony? And
yeah.
I don't even think it went off when that got hit.
No, I don't think it had. You know, and it was like that when we rolled up, like the trail truck got engaged. And we're like, "Did you return fire?" Like, no, they're going the other way, and they were and they fired on us way out of range. And we're like, "Oh," and it was kind of, I mean, the first little bit of it, it was kind of how it was gonna. We thought that's kind of how it was gonna be. It was just pop shots. I mean, the enemy would engage us, but they would be either out of our range or out of their range, and then they would disappear and melt back into the population.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't, and you're like, dang it! By the time you turn and fix and try to fix and you know and engage, they were gone. And
Mm-hmm. And I remember when when we were down in Kuwait before we headed north, we had installed all that add-on armor like the ballistic door and the ballistic kick plates and the little shield thing on the inside of the Humvee. Now mount hauling that into the truck and actually bolting that on, like I don't know, maybe I don't know what it did for you, but it kind of gave me a false sense of like no one's gonna touch me, right? There's nothing's gonna get through this. I don't know about you, but I felt very confident once we strapped that stuff on the truck.
we got the front windshield, the two front doors, and the back plate, but we didn't get the rear, the rear doors. And so on my truck, I mounted foot brackets so that I could hang out of my vehicle and from either side and clear, like when we went underneath overpasses and stuff to clear bridges, because we were thinking, I mean, we knew the IEDs were a threat, but we were thinking more along the lines of sustained firefight, not IEDs, and that was the primary threat facing us when we rolled, when we rolled north.
Right. I remember once we got there, we linked up with Second ACR, who was the unit there before us, and we started to do the right seat, left seat rides, and their Humvees were doorless, and they had given us a good reason for why we should travel doorless. It gives us ease of moving in and out of our vehicle because we're going to do a lot of stopping and getting out and getting back in, that kind of thing. So they made a good point for us to go doorless. So we ended up taking our freaking doors off our Humvees, and that's kind of how we cruised around. And
Yeah,
I didn't have that high speed kick plate that you had on yours. I remember that though. Now that you mention it.
yeah, and so we rolled around like that, and I remember we were doing our right seat rides, and second ACR guys were, and the one, even the one AD guys were both like, hey, y'all are looking a little tough, and we're like, yeah, that's kind of how we want to look. We want to look hard. We want to look tough. And they're like, oh, there's no need for that, man. Everything's cool. It's all relaxed, man. We haven't had any problems with it. I remember we rode through Solder City, and they were kind of like, yeah, Solder City is kind of the Wild Wild West, but we haven't had a problem in a long time. It's been real quiet, and nobody's giving us any problems. And we rolled through there and took our sweet time going through there, like nothing was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole right seat ride was kind of like that. It was like, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do your TCP. This is how you need to do search for and we hand search for IEDs. And we got out there, and there was just so much trash. And like, yeah, you need all these little boxes. And we're sitting there going, okay. And like, how do you determine? They're like, well, we just kind of look for what you figure out what's new on the route or what's different, and everything that we know now is what you need to
Mm-hmm.
do. But it was just
Hmm.
all completely in one ear and kind of out. I mean, you retained it, but it just didn't make any sense to you at the time,
Right.
and because we were thinking this is ridiculous, just clear the trash, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and so we were doing that, and that's kind of how we got up to April. I mean, to April 4th. It was that very. We're still doing our hot seat rides. We hadn't taken over. We were still going out and doing dual patrols. I think the big event that we'd had was that one dismounted patrol where we found all that ammunition right outside the gate.
Mm-hmm. And at this time too, remember we only had force protection ammo at this point.
Oh yeah, we hadn't drawn our full combat. Yeah, we hadn't
No, we
really
had
we hadn't drawn our full
one.
combat load.
Yeah, we had like one magazine a person, right? And because I mean, our mission wasn't combat. Our mission was humanitarian in nature. I mean, we left a lot of our Bradleys and our tanks back at Fort Hood. I remember a lot of tankers and Bradley, infantrymen were cruising around and in a foreign vehicle called a Humvee, right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
used to cruising around in their tanks and Brads, and now they're cruising around in Humvees because we weren't there as an occupation force. We weren't there to invade and to capture, and that was already supposedly done. Now we were there to rebuild and try to reclaim some infrastructure and establish running water, electricity, schools, all that kind of fun stuff. At least that's what we were
yeah.
told we were going to be doing, and that's what we thought we were going to be doing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we might have been a little bit more armed than you guys. We had. I mean, I had a full combat loadout. Well, I we made sure our platoon made sure we had a full combat loadout, but we didn't have a full. We didn't have a truly full what you would want to take. We had everything we could get our hands on,
Hmm.
and then so, but we didn't have like we weren't rolling around. We'd taken the Mark 19s down. We had 50 cals up. We had a few 50, like one 50 cal up or a few 50 cals up, but we didn't have all the 50 cals up. We had 240s up and saws up instead of the heavy machine guns and the heavy weapons. We were rolling around, and the guys from that were doing the right seat rides were telling us about, yeah, they were, after the invasion, they were rolling around without body armor and without Kevlar, just having that in the truck because they didn't really need it because these places we were going were peaceful and the community was there and they wanted to rebuild and so we had
Hmm.
this, it wasn't, while we were very hard, they were very soft. And that wasn't not to say they were complacent, but it just wasn't the same. We didn't, I mean, wasn't the combat footing that we were soon to be on.
Right. Yeah, the op tempo that they were experiencing was very much going to change. And I think that's really, I think April 4th was really the day that kind of solidified the fact that we were in combat. And there was, honest to God, a lot of people there that were trying to kill us. And so let's talk about, so everybody's that's listening is kind of getting a sense for kind of what our mentality has been up to this point. We're trying to be diligent. We're trying to learn everything we can from a unit that's been here for a year. Their op tempo was much different than what ours ended up being, and of course, I mean, how do you really pack a year's worth of foreign combat experience into a 2 week right seat left seat ride? I mean, it's very ludicrous now that you look back on it and you think about it. You're like, wow, that's you have more of an overlap when you're bringing somebody new into a company, and that's just one person. Now you're talking about switching over literally a couple thousand guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and so we didn't have the same. Um, they were familiar with the terrain. We weren't that familiar. I mean, we were learning it, but we weren't. We didn't. We were still learning everything. And so I think April 4th. I remember that morning. If you want to jump into it, I remember that morning we woke up and there was radio chatter of a fob. I want to say I think it was a Polish fob, but a fob that had been hit and attacked pretty hard and was getting overrun and down south of us, down near Abu Ghraib, maybe.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so we were instructed to load up all the class 5, so all the ammo we could get a hold of. So we loaded our trucks up heavy that day. And so we pulled all the Mark 19s up. We had all the Mark 19 ammo I want to say most of that might have been on. I might be getting confused here, but I want to say we loaded heavy for that day for some reason. I want to say that was the reason why was we were anticipating maybe having to roll down south and do some sort of rescue mission or intervention or something. And so we'd put all this ammo on the trucks. Um, Out of the jail, we went and got where we stored all the ammo. We'd gotten all of our class 5 out,
Mm-hmm.
and
And it wasn't in response to what happened, what was about to go down in Solder City. It was in response to something that was going down further away from our RAO. Yeah.
yeah, completely. We were sitting there going, man, this is far out, from where we're at, but we were told to be ready to react if needed because our unit was kind of 911 for the brigade, and as far
Mm-hmm.
as we were concerned, at least my platoon, I'm sure First Platoon felt the same way. We were the if you wanted it done right, you needed to send us in.
Yep. And we still had our doors off at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the doors are still off.
Yep. And so I don't remember exactly what time it went off. I want to say it was around 1400, probably close to that, when we started getting reports about a platoon or a convoy that was pinned down in Solder City. Do you remember?
It was, I think, I want to say it was closer to lunch, maybe a little bit earlier, but we gotten told that whatever mission that we were thinking for that other fob was going to go was scrubbed. That there was something going that was starting to develop in Solder City, and we were to stand by in case we needed to move that way. And you could hear the gunfire. That was what was
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. You could hear the fight, and we were wanting to get out the gate, like anybody does. I mean, like the guys over at War Eagle wanted to do. You hear the fight. You know your guys are in trouble or are engaged in sustained contact, and as any American soldiers, any soldier wants to do, you want to go to your brother's aid. You want to get
Mm-hmm.
out there, and so we were wanting to get um, out the gate.
Yep. And I remember, so it popped off. Everything started kind of go crazy. I ran into the CP, and you can just hear the radios. The troop net and the brigade net were just going crazy, with all kinds of activity.
Hmm.
Contact reports were coming out. I mean, it went from kind of a calm. I don't know if you want to call it a normal day, because every day in Iraq was far from normal, but relatively speaking, it was a kind of a normal day, and all of a sudden it started to turn and to change, and it was almost tangible, like you can almost taste it or feel it in the air. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean, it was electrical. You could something was changing. It wasn't whatever we were entering into, whatever event was happening was is a landmark event. It was going to change. It was You could sense that was changing, and that was going to the course of our deployment. It was the gravity of it.
Mm.
Because everybody that had been there for a year was running around. You could see it in their face. They were like, this doesn't happen. This is new. This is insane.
Yeah,
And
when you started looking in the faces of the guys that have been there for a year, and their eyebrows are raised and they're looking a little nervous and skittish, that was alarming to me to see. You know what I mean?
yeah, and then I remember not too long after it really started to get and you could I mean you could hear the medevacs coming over and different things. We got ordered to go and pick up the brigade surgeon and a couple other personnel from our fob, a couple of other of the senior medical personnel, and take them to War Eagle.
Hmm.
And so that became our mission. And
I think
so
it was right about that same time. My headquarters platoon was also dispatched um, to maintain a presence out on the route and basically wait for any follow-on missions.
mhm.
And so we kind of kicked out on the route Pluto, and was patrolling that for a while, listening to the radio, just ready to react to anything that was going on.
Yeah, yeah, because I think they rolled all the troop elements out on mission that day, and so we ran them down there, and so it was all of a sudden, like at that moment, when you said what was it, it was real. It was, can I do my job? Are my guys ready? Because we got to be, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't anything else. It was, we got to be. We have to be. Right now we have to be. I have to perform. I have to deliver. I have to get this guy down to War Eagle. And so we shot up. My element shot up to War Eagle. I think it was the 3 trucks. So it was me um and the 2 other trucks in my deal, and so the Sergeant Gangwire, one of the other guys, he took his truck took lead, and then Sergeant Hardy was in the middle, and I brought up the rear, and we rolled north, and so we were still rolling doors off. And when we got into War Eagle, it was insane. It was organized chaos, but the we rolled straight in and got there and rolled right up to the aid station, and the amount of medical supplies that they'd expended that was just piled up was unreal. I mean, to see it over the best I can relate it would be like some of the old movies from Vietnam when they had the mass casualty sites. When you see
Mm-hmm.
when they've been occupied or in the fight for days, and you see just mounds of bandages, and they were just it was just piles of outside the aid station, just piles of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and then the medevac helicopters were coming in, and then I remember them coming out and going. We dropped off the deal, and then immediately we were sitting there. We made contact with Charlie Battery, and kind of they gave us a. You could see some of the stares and some of the faces. They had gotten some of the reports back on who had been killed. This is real. These guys are gone, and then you hear the stories about what those guys did, how they volunteered to go out, and then
Mm-hmm.
that just spurred you on even more. You're like, okay, now I got to go. I got to get out there.
Mm-hmm.
I have this. I have ammo. I have Mark 19. I have a 50 cal. I have get me out to the fight. And so what can we do? It was, what can we do next? What's our follow on mission? What's our follow on order? Because we got the brigade surgeon here. Now what can we do? And it was, okay, well, now we got guys that we need to we got wounded that we need to get out of here. Um, back to the level 2 hospital at Cuervo,
Mm-hmm.
and we're running black on medical supplies, and we're running black on ammo
Mm-hmm.
because they hadn't drawn their combat load for the Bradleys.
Right.
And we need you guys to go secure all that stuff, get these guys out of here, and come back. And so like, okay, so that was our tag on mission.
And I think it was right about that same time we got reports that the Blackhawks couldn't make any more Kazivac landings in Eagle because of the incoming rounds and the small arms attacks that they were taking contact, landing in the fob and taking off out of the fob. So that was declared a no-fly zone, and that's when my section was instructed to proceed to Eagle and basically start running casualties from Eagle down to Cuervo. And the first time my section entered Eagle, I want to say it was the sun hadn't gone down quite yet, but it was starting to. So I don't know, maybe 1630 probably is when we made our first entry into Eagle. And yeah, we went straight to the aid station. I didn't even really know where the aid station was on Eagle because, we barely knew our way around our own fob, let alone this fob we never really been on before. But it wasn't hard to figure out the aid station. It was where all of the activity was happening. All you had to do was see somebody running in a direction, and you just follow that person, and ended up being the aid station. And very similar to your initial impression, it was mine as well. I remember rolling up, and there was just the aid station was completely full inside, so they started to create casualty collection points per casualty grade outside on the grass or on the dirt
Yep.
ground there. And they had them categorized into walking wounded, expectant, the whole category of casualties. And I just remember seeing just a separate piles of gear. Like I remember seeing a pile of OTVs on the ground, and then next to that was like a pile of Kevlar helmets, and then next to that was stacks of weapons, and next to that was boots, and next to that it was just it was just mind-boggling to say the least to see that. And that's, I think, I mean, hearing the gunshots and the gunfire, and we got pop shots on the way up to Eagle, and we knew we were getting shot at. But even then, it didn't really hit me until we got to the aid station. We saw that, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is real." And I just remember we pulled up, and somebody ran up to the truck and asked if we had a combat lifesaver bag because they were out of medical supplies.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah." And so I yelled back to the rest of the section, told everybody to dig out all the combat lifesaver bags we had, because there was, we had multiple bags in our truck, each truck,
Right.
because we always, everyone in our platoon was combat lifesaver certified, so we carried heavy medical supplies, and everybody just dug that out and just turned it over to the aid station, and they were literally running not only low on ammo, but they were running completely low on medical supplies. So my first mission, they were loading up. It wasn't an LMTV. I think it was either a 5-ton or deuce and a half. It was an older troop carrier anyway. And they were loading it up with casualties. And our mission was to escort this deuce and a half from Eagle down to Cuervo, drop off to casualties at the aid station, and then resupply, pick up more ammo and more medical supplies, and bring it back to Eagle. That was our next mission. And then I'll let you pick up. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I mean, very similar. We had it was a 5-ton. I think might have been 2 5-tons. We had a 5-ton, but we rolled those guys south. And I think I remember passing y'all when y'all were coming out. I remember passing y'all on the way back up. But we had a big like 2 trucks full of ammo, and then 2 trucks full of medical supplies, and then all the medical personnel that they could spare out of Cuervo on the deal with us. I remember we rolled in and we got yelled at because we didn't stop to clear our weapons, because all we were doing was coming in, picking these trucks, dropping that 5-ton off, and picking up these trucks on the way back out. And as we were unloading the wounded into the deal, this colonel comes up and yells at us about clearing the because our 50 cal was still locked and loaded, and about not taking time to clear the weapons. And we're like, well, we explained to her that we want to be safe, but hey, we're not here long enough to do that. We're on our hierarchy of needs. Stopping and clearing weapons and dropping patients off and rolling back out was not in that deal. Everybody knew we were. I mean, because we were going right back out into the fray. And
Right.
I remember, it was real when we saw the stuff, and when we saw those piles of medical and those piles of Kevlars and OTVs and all that stuff. But on the way down, we started taking. We rolled through. I think there was a crowd that was riding. No, that was later on. But we took some rounds to the truck. I remember seeing some rounds ricochet off the ground and hit down low on the deal, and I was like, they're shooting directly at us. Yeah, and it's having effects on the vehicle, and it was like, yeah, I kind of wish I had some doors now, but
yeah.
But we were still hanging out and rolling, and so we did that. And I think when we got back up to Cuervo, we dropped all that off, and then they were like, well, we need to do an angel flight out of here. So they had another truck loaded up, and then we got ready to do that.
And I remember we just made this round trip back and forth from Cuervo to Eagle. I can't even tell you how many times, but I will tell you that as we were bringing, once we got down to Cuervo, it was taking longer for us to I don't know, for them to load up whatever they were loading up, because I just don't think they were quite ready for this craziness that was happening down at Cuervo. So by the time we got down there, they were still loading up. And at this one of the trips, we ended up hauling back like a Hemet full of ammo. I don't know if it was Bradley ammo, tank ammo, what it was, but we escorted not only that 5-ton back, but we escorted a Hemet full of something back. And one of the trips on the way down there, when you're heading down, what was that route that went from? Was it Arrows?
Yeah.
No, yeah,
No.
yeah, Arrows. So when you're heading south on Arrows, you go over the bridge and then you hang a left and go south on Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
We got to that bridge and there was all kinds of enemy contact and all kinds of rioting and stuff that was going on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't get south. So we ended up hanging a left on the off ramp of Pluto northbound. And we ended up cruising all the way down the Cuervo, going against traffic, heading south in the northbound lane of Pluto. And of course, normally we were riding around blackouts, but this time we had our headlights on and we were trying to basically not get into a head-on collision as we're heading to Cuervo, escorting this 5-ton of casualties and whatnot in the back of that thing.
Yeah, and I remember we bring those Hemmets up with that ammo, and then we were running that Angel flight down with the KIAs and ran them down. And you're right, Cuervo. I don't know if they just didn't grasp the gravity of it or the urgency that we all had once we went to War Eagle, but we were running the same missions, and then uh I remember you know Cowboy 6 being down there. I think getting down to Cuervo and coordinating some of the stuff because it was just taking too long.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you said, they were riding, and I remember we rolled through that. I think First Armor was in a firefight across that bridge, and we rolled in between them and the enemy, trying to get out of that. To get down there when we had those casualties the first or second time, and the next time we rolled through there, they stopped us and we went around them.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just, I mean, it was insane. It was because everywhere you went, it was just one rolling contact from War Eagle down to Cuervo.
Yeah, and it was, by the time the sun finally went down, I just remember it being really, really cold. Our doors were still off, so our heaters were cranking, but they weren't doing a whole lot. And you didn't really feel the cold at first because just the adrenaline, but
Yeah.
after being basically in this state of heightened awareness and alertness and being shot at for, by this time, going on probably 9 8 9 hours anyway. I remember it being probably 11 o'clock at night. Really, really, it was dark. I just remember it being so dark. And I remember as we were cruising down Arrows towards Pluto, I just remember looking at the ground, as we were driving, just kind of looking down at the ground outside the truck whipping by. And I just distinctly remember seeing like sparks.
Yeah.
And I was like, at first I couldn't figure out what the hell it was. I was like, sparks. I'm like, are we dragging a chain? Like I couldn't figure out what it was. And then it just hit me all at once that it was bullets that were actually ricocheting off of the ground, that were sparking off the ground, but they were like everywhere.
Yeah.
And I couldn't hear the gunfire, probably because just the loudness of the truck or what it was, but I couldn't really hear any gunfire going off, but I could see all these sparks. And it was almost as if the enemy was trying to take out our tires, I think, to
Mhm.
try to disable us so they can, ambush us or whatever. I'm not sure what their thought process was, or maybe they were just so far out that they were shooting at our trucks, but it was dropping low and hitting the ground before it hit us. I don't know, but I just distinctly remember that and just thinking they're shooting at us, like they're seriously shooting at us. And I remember a couple rounds kind of hitting the truck, and it was just such a chaotic time. But you've got the mission in the back of your head, and that is, get these guys that are in this, 5-ton behind you. And as well as I do, we can get very creative with where you drive those Humvees if it's just the 3 trucks.
Yeah.
But when you're escorting a Hammett or you're escorting a 5-ton and the drivers probably aren't as skilled and don't really know exactly where they're going, you've got to be really careful about where you go and what corners you take, because last thing you want to do is end up down some road somewhere that that's, non-maneuverable by the larger element. Next, you're stuck, and now you're just a prime opportunity for an ambush.
Yeah, and especially with those guys in the back, you didn't know how bad a shape they were in. So, you're trying to you're trying to go smooth, but at the same time you're trying to get them the heck out of there. And it was rough. And I think that, that same experience of going and seeing those rounds hitting around the truck, excuse me, was when it set in. And then, like you said, I remember that night was one of the coldest nights I had in Iraq. So we finally got.
Hmm.
We were we and whoever we escorted were the only wheeled vehicles that were rolling after a certain time, and then finally, the brigade commander shut it down. They shut it down for all wheeled traffic that night,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, I think I was down in Cuervo. I was down in Cuervo when the order to shut down the. I was down in Cuervo waiting for that next round of medical supplies and ammunition to get loaded. And that's when we caught word that all vehicular traffic outside the fobs were shut down. I think that order was not meant for us. I think it was meant for like everyone else, because
mhm,
we were still rolling, casualties out and rolling, medical supplies and ammunition back north. So we were given like this stand down kind of thing, and I was like, what the hell? But we hadn't eaten all day long, so we were pretty close to where the dining facility in Cuerva was, and I knew that probably wasn't going to have any like chow waiting for us. But you know how the dining facilities always have like extra stuff, cereal and coffee and who
yeah,
knows leftover whatever out. So I figured there's probably something. So I told the guys to just head over. We'll just leave the trucks where they were. Let's head over to the dining facility there on Cuervo and just see if they had anything to eat. And I remember walking in there, and they did. They had, leftover coffee you can stand a spoon in, and, the best kind. And, I think they had cereal and some milk, maybe some fruit, whatever. We were just kind of in there, like a bunch of scavengers, just kind of picking away whatever we could. But I distinctly remember it was a fairly large flat screen TV that was on in there, and CNN was running, and the CNN reporters were reporting about the battle in Sadr City. And it was so surreal to be in Cuervo watching CNN, watching a battle that you're in, live on TV, only to say, okay, we're done. Let's hop back in the trucks, and now let's go drive back into that craziness. And it was weird because the footage, I don't know who was there reporting or where they were getting the footage, but some of the footage that they showed on CNN, um, it made it so real that what we were driving in and out of was actually really dangerous. I mean, if the piles of Kevlars and OTVs didn't get me, that definitely kind of sent chills through my spine. I just like, okay, guys, I needed to get them fed, but I needed to get them the hell out of there too, because I didn't want them standing there just taking that in. Because
yeah,
if it would have the same effect on them as it did on me, I didn't want to run with a crew that started to really think about that too hard. You know what I mean?
right, yeah. And so, like, I think we came in and we might have snuck out of Cuervo one more time after that came out, and then got down in there. I think we linked up with you guys wherever y'all. I think we were parked over by one of the gates, or
Mm-hmm.
fairly close to the gate, and where we've been picking up those hemmets. And so we rolled up there, and I just remember tearing down or finding some boxes and putting them to jam up the doors and sleeping. And that was, I think it was the only time might have had an MRE while I was in Iraq, but it was the coldest night ever I had while I was in Iraq.
It was cold, man. I do remember that. It was cold. Oh man, it was. I don't even remember how that night ended. I just remember we ended up in back in Eagle for a while, and we were basically told to stand by for further orders. I'm not sure what they were going to have us do. I think they pretty much had all the casualties evacuated out of Eagle down in Cuervo already, and I'm sure the dust offs that were going from the green zone to Cuervo were just, I don't know how many Blackhawks came in that night, man, but there was a lot of helicopter traffic going in and out of Cuervo, taking everybody that was wounded back to the green zone, and treating them there. But all in all, it was just a horrific night, but it definitely was kind of the, I don't know, the cornerstone of what the rest of our deployment was going to be. I mean, there was no question after that what we were there for, and there was no question after that what the enemy was there to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and looking, I mean, looking back on it, we're like, you see, and you're like, that was we were, it was real, and it was tough, and it was nasty, and we experienced a lot of stuff, but at the same time, the guys that were actually out down the street, man, you go, and my experience on April 4th, and all of that, my part of that fight was just so minuscule compared to what
Mm,
the guys in Alpha Bravo and or Charlie Troop 25 were in,
mm-hmm.
and then and it was that we kind of had that longing to, hey, we got heavy weapons, let's get out there, but we didn't experience the same way. I mean, it's a somber day for us, as a division, as a First Brigade Task Force, as a 1 BCT, but I mean, we were in the fight that day, but my experience is not
Yeah, we were definitely very lucky. Not that the enemy didn't try that night with us,
right.
but yeah, I mean, you're right. It started with that section that was escorting the suckerbutt truck there, the honeypot truck. They were
Yeah,
going somewhere inside our city, and they were ambushed. And there is a book in the show notes page of this episode. It's called the Long Road Home, and it basically gets into more detail and specifics about the platoon that was pinned down inside our city, and then the quick reactionary forces or the QRFs that volunteered to go in and try to provide covering fire to extract them and extract the wounded and the casualties. And they were subsequently ambushed and suffered casualty and killed in action as well. And then they just kept, more and more people just kept going in. And I mean, it was really just like you said, it was a somber night, but you know what? It was the test and fortitude of all the guys in First Cav Division and First Brigade Combat Team, that no matter who it was, everybody was there to, get each other's backs and to be there for them, or at least try. And those guys that sacrificed everything, that gave their lives that night, it wasn't in vain, man. They did that to save their brothers. And there's so many more. The reports of wounded vary. I've read reports where it says 40. I've read reports that says upwards of 50 plus, but it was definitely a large number of some pretty significant and serious wounded soldiers as a result of that battle that night. And that was really kind of the kickoff, the kickoff of what they called the sustained combat operations. That we were in sustained combat operations for 80 plus days, starting on April 4th, 2004. Not every day or not every night was that dramatic, but it really kind of set the stage. That's when we really started to see an increase in enemy activity, from IED attacks to small arms attacks, RPG attacks, and the list goes on and on. And it was just a few short days after April 4th that we lost our first member of our platoon, Specialist Justin Johnson, to an IED on Route Pluto, kind of halfway between Camp Cuervo and Iron Horse. And it was all still rolled up into this sustained combat operations. And again, by this time we'd had our doors on. We were smart enough to put our doors back on because we were like, this is the real deal now. And we definitely got more magazines of ammunition, and I think we got our cruise serve weapons put back on our trucks. And it was the turning point, I think, for all of us, that we just did a shift in a mind shift and a tactical shift. We went from peacekeeping to combat operations.
Yeah, definitely. After that night, it was the op tempo changed, the game plan kind of changed, the way we patrolled definitely changed, the way that we staged our trucks changed. It was, everything was, we learned on the fly the entire time we were over there, and this was the first lesson that we learned. and so it all shifted. And then, like you said, that night when we lost, less than a week later when we lost JJ,
Mm-hmm.
that was, I mean, that was still this part of this big rolling battle that we were still having. And man, that was it. That was when it was real, but that's when it got home. It got home. It,
Yeah. I mean, we knew some of the guys that were killed April 4th, but they weren't directly attached to our platoon. They weren't one of our guys. You know what I mean? And I know that you felt the same way that I do. That every guy in the Colt platoon, they were our guys. You know what I mean? I was first squad leader. You were second squad leader, and then our family grew when we were attached to the BRT. Because then I had some other members of the headquarters platoon, and you were embedded with second platoon, and they become more than coworkers. They're brothers, they're family. All right, folks, I'm going to stop it here. This is the conclusion of the first part of this two-part series. This episode is a special tribute episode to those very brave men and women that fought the night of April 4th, 2004, and for the 7 soldiers that lost their lives and upwards of 40 plus that were seriously wounded inside our city in support of that operation. Tune in next week, episode 42, when Jay and I conclude our conversation and we get into specifics of him and his story, a little bit about his background, why he joined the Army, our time together preparing for the big deployment to Iraq, and then his time post-deployment and what he's got going on these days. You can find all of the show notes for everything that we covered today at changeyourpov.com/episode 40. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We've got a lot more great content headed your way. If you want to reach out to me directly, you could email me at eddie@changeyourpov.com. We would love to hear from you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Change Your POV podcast. I am your host, Eddie Lazary. Stay tuned for next week, episode 42, when Jay and I conclude our conversation, and he gets a little bit more into detail with his specific story of how he joined the Army and our time together as we were preparing to deploy to Iraq, and his story in Iraq. Never miss an episode. You can find all the show notes for this episode at changeyourpov.com/episode 40. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We've got a lot. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. If you want to reach me directly, you can email me at eddie@changeyourpov.com. I would love to hear from you. This is it. Until next time.